Get the UNIFIL forces out of harm's way. It should be done right now, immediately.
The law of military deployments, which holds that it's way harder to get troops out than send them in, applies at least as reliably to peacekeeping operations as to any other kind. The United Nations Department of Peace Operations currently has 11 peacekeeping missions on the go. 4 have been on the ground for more than half a century. UNIFIL has not quite got 50 years on the clock. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, to give it its full name, though interim has been doing heavier lifting as the mission has ground on, was established back in 1978. For pretty much the entire period these peacekeepers have been deployed, there hasn't been much peace to keep, and UNIFIL finds itself back in the news after several of its positions were fired upon by Israeli forces, occasioning injuries to 5 peacekeepers. In another incident, Israeli tanks drove through and destroyed the main gate of one UN base.
It's the latest Israeli attack on peacekeepers in the region. On Thursday, 2 UN peacekeepers were injured when an Israeli tank fired on an observation tower in the mission's headquarters.
It is difficult to believe that these incidents were accidental. Anybody with a smartphone can see where the UN's bases in Lebanon are, and the white vehicles, blue helmets and UN flags are also a bit of a giveaway. Shooting up UN positions is of a piece with Israel's current attitude to the UN generally, which has included declaring the Secretary-Actual-General persona non grata and the organisation entire, in recent remarks of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a house of darkness, a swamp of anti-Semitic bile, an anti-Israel flat earth society, and a contemptuous farce.
In this anti-Israel flat earth society, any false charge, any outlandish allegation can muster a majority.
And UNIFIL is, in its present state, as indeed the Israelis have demonstrated, difficult to miss. It is currently 10,000 troops drawn from 48 countries, commanded by Spanish Lieutenant General Haroldo Sáenz. The biggest contingents right now are from Indonesia, Italy, India, Nepal, Ghana and Malaysia, who are each contributing a battalion or so. But what are they actually doing there?
The people of Lebanon, innocent civilians whose country is now a war front.
UNIFIL's original deployment in 1978 was a response to, listeners hypersensitive to leaden irony may wish to look away now, an Israeli invasion of Lebanon undertaken in response to an atrocity perpetrated on Israeli soil by Palestinian terrorists. Specifically, the murder of 38 Israeli civilians, including 13 children, in a bus hijacking near Tel Aviv. Then, as now, southern Lebanon had been appropriated by a militant group as a base for operations against Israel. Not Hezbollah, who were not yet a thing, but the Palestine Liberation Organization. UNIFIL's original mandate consisted of 3 objectives. 1. Confirm withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon. 2. Restore international peace and security. 3. Assist the government of Lebanon in ensuring the return of its effective authority in the area. Nearly half a century of UNIFIL presence later, all 3 boxes languish obstinately unticked. Israeli forces returned to southern Lebanon in 1982 and stayed for 18 years. They came back briefly in 2006, and they're there again now. Peace and security of any variety remain in short supply. The government of Lebanon has roughly as much effective authority in the area as it does in, say, Tahiti. UNIFIL does not look any greater a success measured against the criteria of an updated mandate issued after the short Israel-Hezbollah war of 2006. This demanded not only the withdrawal of Israeli forces, but enjoined UNIFIL to, quote, assist the Lebanese armed forces in taking steps towards the establishment between the Blue Line and the Litani River of an area free of any armed personnel, assets and weapons other than those of the government of Lebanon and of UNIFIL. That is, to ensure that Hezbollah removed their missiles and themselves from southern Lebanon. The Blue Line referred to is, more or less, Lebanon's border with Israel. This never happened. Not only did Hezbollah stay obstinately put in southern Lebanon, they acted like they owned the place. Your correspondent, taken on a guided tour of southern Lebanon by Hezbollah circa late 2001, noted the haste with which Lebanese soldiers at checkpoints stepped aside when told who was driving the car. Hezbollah festooned southern Lebanon with rocket-launching positions, letting fly at Israel as political expediency or malevolent whim directed.
If you can see right over here from your right and from your left, you can see a few tunnels.
During Israel's present incursion into Lebanon, IDF troops have shown journalists Hezbollah tunnel entrances a few hundred meters from UNIFIL positions and weapons stashes and firing positions throughout a region that UNIFIL was supposed to be guaranteeing free of such things. Israel's exasperation with UNIFIL is not a recent or entirely unjustified development. As is vexingly often the case with UN deployments, there is a dissonance between the theoretical mission and the practical means of accomplishing it. Disarming Hezbollah and forcing them north was never going to be achieved by polite request or even firm tone. UNIFIL's rules of engagement do contain some woolly chat about how they, quote, may under certain circumstances and conditions resort to the proportionate and gradual use of force to ensure that its area of operations is not utilized for hostile activities. But there is no real world in which anybody would read that as encouragement for the UN to saddle up for guerrilla war against a heavily armed local militia, or for that matter, to shoot back at the IDF. To be clear, it is probably better that UNIFIL have been there than not. UNIFIL have served as a monitoring, mediation and demining service and certainly have not done the local economy any harm over the years. To be even clearer, nobody should be shooting at them. But not for the first time in the history of UN peacekeeping, and to borrow the great BBC correspondent Martin Bell's assessment of a similar endeavour in Bosnia, they have become the military equivalent of a sign saying, "Please don't throw rocks at this sign." For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Mueller.